G'day guys, what is up? Mackie's Mad Sports here and welcome back to the first video on this new channel. Today I'm going to be predicting every AFL game in 2026. Anyways guys, let's get straight into it. So we start off the season in Sydney, with Sydney taking on Carlton for the first game of the season. Now I reckon that Sydney are going to be back this year. They're going to be better than they were last year and definitely almost fight for a top 4 spot. Carlton, however, I still see them being on the lower side of the ladder, and I think that Sydney will win the first game of the season by 24 points. Now moving on to the second game, Gold Coast versus Geelong in Gold Coast. Now this will be another very good game between two sides who are definitely fighting out for the top 4 this year. Gold Coast have one of the best all-round sides, and so do Geelong as well, but I see this being a very close game with Gold Coast winning by 3 points. Now, moving on to GWS versus Hawthorn, another good game to start the season off. I do see another close game happening here, but I have an upset with Hawthorn winning by 11 points. Now moving on to the fourth game of opening round, which is Brisbane versus Bulldogs at the Gabba. Now Brisbane are definitely the favourites to go for a three-peat this season, where the Bulldogs are sort of struggling around the middle order. They definitely have the side to win, but I don't think are capable enough to beat Brisbane, and that's why I see them winning by about 19 points. Now moving on to the last game of opening round at the MCG, it is St Kilda versus Collingwood. This is going to be the big game, the first game at the home of footy this season, and I think I'll predict an upset of St Kilda by 4 points. Now moving on to round 1 with the classic matchup between Carlton and Richmond. This game is always a good game, and we saw last year we don't really know what's going to happen, but I don't see another big upset like that happening this year, and I think Carlton will win comfortably by 17 points. Now, Essendon versus Hawthorn at the MCG, the club that Zach Merritt wanted to move to. This will be a very fiery contest, I reckon, as it is usually, but I see Hawthorn winning in a bit of a blowout by 51 points. Now, Bulldogs versus GWS at Marvel Stadium will be another good game in round 1. The first game on the Saturday, but I do see the Bulldogs winning pretty comfortably though by 23 points. Now, Geelong versus Fremantle, the same matchup as last year, where Murphy Reid kicked 4 goals on debut. I see Geelong winning again comfortably in this game by around 33 points. Now, Sydney versus Brisbane, again the same game that happened last year in round 1. I forgot who won that game, but this year I do see Sydney pulling off an early upset against Brisbane at their home ground by 2 points. Now, Collingwood versus Adelaide at the MCG on the Saturday night, probably one of the biggest games of the round, especially between these two clubs. I reckon it will be a very tight and close game, but I do see Collingwood winning their round 1 game by 7 points. Now, North Melbourne versus Port Adelaide at Marvel Stadium should as well be another good game between two lower half sides this year. I do think that North Melbourne do have the capabilities this year to be very good, and that's why I see them winning by 7 points. Now, Melbourne versus St Kilda, we know what happened last year with Nasiah Wanganeen-Millera kicking the game-winning goal after the siren. This will be again a very close game, but I see St Kilda coming out late and winning by 22 points. And a last game of round 1, Gold Coast versus West Coast in the Gold Coast. I see Gold Coast smashing West Coast, who probably a top 4 team against a bottom 4 team. I see Gold Coast winning by about 81 points. Now, moving on to round 2, with the first game on the Thursday night being between Hawthorn and Sydney. This will be a very big game. Both these clubs definitely looking at a top 4 spot this year, but I do see Hawthorn winning with the home ground advantage by 6 points. Now, Adelaide and Western Bulldogs at the Adelaide Oval, another big game on the Friday night. I do see the Crows winning their first game of the season though, comfortably by around 26 points. Now, Richmond and Gold Coast at the MCG, two very different sides, one looking to finish top 4 and one looking to try and get something out of this season again. I do see Gold Coast winning again very comfortably by around 68 points. Now, GWS versus St Kilda, I actually am going to predict an upset here with St Kilda to win by 5 points. Fremantle versus Melbourne at Optus Stadium should be a comfortable win for Fremantle by about 36 points. Now, Port Adelaide versus Essendon, two again lower half sides. I do see Port Adelaide winning though by 20 points. Now, West Coast versus North Melbourne. These two teams are very similar, have been at the bottom of the ladder for around the last 5 years now, and I do see West Coast winning an early game this season by 4 points with the home ground advantage. Now, moving on to the start of round 3, Geelong and Adelaide at GMHBA, I find it very hard to see where the Crows will win this game, and I'm going to predict Geelong by 32 points. Now, Collingwood versus GWS at Marvel Stadium should be a very close game, and I'm going to predict Collingwood by just the 1 point here. Now, St Kilda versus Brisbane at Marvel, I do see a world where St Kilda can provide an upset here, but I am going to predict Brisbane by 13 points. Fremantle versus Richmond at Optus Stadium, again should be a comfortable win for Fremantle, winning by 60 points. Essendon versus North Melbourne at the Docklands, I actually see this being a very close game, with Essendon just scraping a win by 5 points. Now, Port Adelaide versus West Coast should be pretty comfortable for Port Adelaide to win this by 54 points. And Carlton versus Melbourne at the MCG, a very big game between two big sides. It's going to be close, and I do think that Carlton can pull off a win by 3 points. Now, moving on to the Easter round, starting off with the traditional Brisbane versus Collingwood at the Gabba, I do see Brisbane easily winning this game though by 29 points. Now, North Melbourne versus Carlton at Marvel, I can see where North Melbourne could provide an upset here, but I am going to predict Carlton in a close game. Adelaide versus Fremantle at Adelaide Oval, again should be another good and close game this round, but I do think that Adelaide have the slight edge over Fremantle here, winning by 16 points. Now, Richmond versus Port Adelaide at the MCG, again could be a very close game, but I think Port Adelaide will run away with it, winning by around 40 points. Now, West Coast versus Sydney at Optus Stadium shouldn't be too much of a struggle for Sydney to win here, and I think they'll do it by 50 plus points. Melbourne versus Gold Coast at the MCG. Last year, they did win by a fair bit, Gold Coast, and with the addition of Christian Petrarca to this Gold Coast side, it's not going to make it much better for Melbourne, and I see them winning by 70 plus points. Now, Bulldogs versus Essendon, both games last year were absolutely dominated by the Bulldogs, and I don't see anything much different happening here, with the Bulldogs comfortably winning by 42 points. And now the Easter Monday game between two big rivals, Hawthorn and Geelong at the MCG. This game is always close, and I see no different happening here, but I do think that Geelong will win by 5 points. Now, it's moving on to Gather Round. The first game of Gather Round between Adelaide and Carlton, the same as the first ever Gather Round. I don't see much different happening with the result this time though, with Adelaide comfortably winning by 30 points. Now, Collingwood versus Fremantle, a very good game for a Friday night game. Both these clubs looking to make the top 8 this year and go even further than they did last year, but I do believe Collingwood will win by 23 points. Now, North Melbourne versus Brisbane Lions. This is very unfair for North Melbourne, as they've played Brisbane, I think, every year at Gather Round, and I don't see much different happening, with Brisbane winning by 75 points at the Barossa. Essendon versus Melbourne, again the same as last Gather Round. Essendon and Melbourne should be another close game, but I think Melbourne should win by 8 points. Sydney versus Gold Coast at Norwood Oval. I actually see a slight upset happening here, with Sydney winning by 14 points in Norwood. Now, Hawthorn versus Bulldogs at the Adelaide Oval should be a very good game, but I think that Hawthorn will win by 5 points. Geelong versus West Coast at Norwood Oval, though, will be much different, with Geelong winning by around 75 points. And GWS versus Richmond at the Barossa Park. We saw Richmond almost upset GWS last year, but I don't think that will happen this year, with GWS winning by 30. And Port Adelaide versus St Kilda to end off Gather Round. I actually have an upset happening here, with St Kilda winning by 13 points against Port. Now, moving on to round 6, the big game, Carlton versus Collingwood at the MCG. Carlton, I think, don't have much of a chance, and I think Collingwood will win by 18 points. Now, Geelong versus Bulldogs, this should be a very good game again. Like last year, I reckon it will be high scoring, with Geelong edging out the Bulldogs by 9 points. Sydney vs GWS at the SCG, another very good game between two rival clubs. I reckon Sydney will win by around 18 points though. Gold Coast vs Essendon in the Gold Coast should be a comfortable win for Gold Coast by around 50. And Hawthorn vs Port Adelaide at Marvel should be a Hawthorn win by about 30 points as well. Now, Adelaide vs St Kilda at the Adelaide Oval, again, should be a comfortable win for the Crows, around 40 points. But North Melbourne vs Richmond, again, I think it should be a close game this year, but I reckon North Melbourne will win by 7. And Melbourne vs Brisbane at the MCG, Brisbane should win by around 30 points. And finishing off the round with a Western derby between West Coast and Fremantle should be a comfortable win to Fremantle by about 60 points. Now, we're at the start of round 7, so let's take a look at the ladder. And so far, Gold Coast and Brisbane are 1 and 2, along with Geelong, Sydney and Hawthorn all on 5 and 1. But if we take a look at the bottom of the ladder, Richmond still yet to win a game, 0 and 6. But closely behind is a surprise of GWS, who are 1 and 5, along with Melbourne, Essendon and West Coast. As then the Bulldogs and North Melbourne sit 2 and 4, while Carlton, Port Adelaide and Fremantle sits 3 and 3 at an even. And looking at the top 8 here, we have St Kilda in 8th, Collingwood 7th, and Adelaide all looking to fight to get away from that wild card round so far. But now I am just going to skim through until the end of round 10, and we'll take a look at the ladder when we get there as well. So now taking a look at the ladder after round 10, and we see a pretty similar top 4 with Brisbane, Gold Coast, Geelong and Hawthorn, followed by Sydney, Adelaide, St Kilda and Fremantle, and in the wildcard spots Western Bulldogs and Collingwood. The bottom half of the ladder though consists of GWS, Carlton, Port Adelaide, Melbourne, North Melbourne, Essendon, Richmond and West Coast, all on 1 win, the bottom 3. As we move along to round 11 between Hawthorn and Adelaide, and we're going to try and go a bit quicker for these last half of the season. Starting off with Hawthorn by about 11 points, Essendon by 25, Fremantle by 6, and Gold Coast by 44. I reckon Geelong will win this by about 6 points, and Collingwood will win this by 50 plus. Port Adelaide will pull off a win by 6 points, and GWS will pull off a big upset by 2 points. Bulldogs will beat Melbourne, and I reckon St Kilda can pull off a slight upset against Hawthorn. Geelong will easily beat Carlton, and Sydney will easily beat Richmond too. Brisbane vs Fremantle should be a close game, with Brisbane winning by 4, and Bulldogs and Collingwood will again be a close game, but I think Bulldogs will win by 7. Melbourne GWS, Melbourne will actually win in a very close game in Darwin by 20, and West Coast will beat Essendon in an upset by 3 points. Adelaide vs Geelong, Adelaide will win in a close game by 2 points, and Hawthorn will win against the Bulldogs by 19. North Melbourne will lose to Fremantle in Perth, and Gold Coast will beat Brisbane at Gold Coast. West Coast will lose to Port Adelaide, and Sydney will beat St Kilda at home. And on King's birthday Sunday Eve, Carlton will beat Essendon by 28 points, and on the King's birthday clash, Collingwood will win by 30. Bulldogs will beat Adelaide by 20, and Geelong will beat Gold Coast in a close game by 4 points. Melbourne should beat Essendon, but I'm going to predict an upset with Essendon by 12, and North Melbourne will beat West Coast at Optus Stadium. Port Adelaide are going to provide an upset against Sydney, and Brisbane are going to thrash Richmond though. St Kilda will comfortably beat GWS, and Geelong will provide an upset away against Fremantle. Gold Coast will beat Hawthorn by around 3 goals, and Adelaide will beat Melbourne comfortably too. GWS will win by a couple of goals, and Collingwood will smash Port Adelaide. Richmond will lose to North Melbourne in a tight game, and St Kilda will beat the Bulldogs in a tight game though, and Brisbane will beat Sydney very comfortably too by 40 points. Carlton versus West Coast, Carlton should win very easily, and Collingwood Richmond should be no different as well. Hawthorn versus GWS should be a close game, and I'm going to predict Hawthorn by 3 points, and North Melbourne versus Essendon will have Essendon win by 12. Port Adelaide versus Adelaide will have a close showdown with Adelaide winning by 15, and Fremantle versus Gold Coast will end with Fremantle winning by a singular point. Essendon versus St Kilda should easily win, and Geelong versus Brisbane, Geelong should win by about 28 points, I'm going to say. Gold Coast versus Collingwood will be a close game, with Gold Coast winning by 4, and GWS versus Fremantle will see Fremantle win by 7. Hawthorn versus Melbourne, I reckon Hawthorn will win, and Richmond versus Carlton, Carlton will win. Sydney versus Bulldogs, I'm going to say that Sydney will win by 11 points. Port Adelaide versus North Melbourne, Port Adelaide will win by 40. West Coast versus Adelaide, I reckon we're a bit closer than people expect, with Adelaide winning by 21. And Brisbane versus Essendon, I reckon Brisbane will thrash Essendon by 60. Carlton versus Hawthorn, Hawthorn win. Collingwood versus North Melbourne, I'm going to go Collingwood. GWS versus Geelong, I'm going to say Geelong by 10. And Melbourne versus Richmond, I will say Melbourne by 21. St Kilda versus Port Adelaide will be a close win for St Kilda, and Bulldogs versus West Coast will win by 70 points. Adelaide versus Gold Coast will be a big upset for Gold Coast by 5 points, and Fremantle versus Sydney will comfortably win for Fremantle. Collingwood versus Carlton, Collingwood will win by about 17 points, and Essendon versus GWS should win by 40. Geelong versus St Kilda will be Geelong by 37, and Gold Coast versus Western Bulldogs, I reckon Gold Coast will win by 5. North Melbourne versus Melbourne, I'm going to say Melbourne will win by 34 points in a big win for them, and Richmond and Hawthorn, I'll go with Hawthorn by 60 plus. Sydney versus Adelaide, I'm going to go a slight upset with Adelaide by 10, and Port Adelaide versus Fremantle, a very close game, but Fremantle win by under a goal. West Coast versus Brisbane, I'm going to go Brisbane win, and moving on to round 20, let's have a look at the ladder. This will be my last look at the ladder before the end of the season. So we have Geelong sitting in first, Brisbane in second, Gold Coast in third, and if we look at the bottom of the ladder, Richmond with 1 win and 17 losses, West Coast with 2 wins, Essendon and North Melbourne with 4 wins each. There's really no real surprises, except for the fact that GWS is sitting at 11th, not even in the wildcard spot. That's a little bit surprising. I don't expect them to do really well this season, but I still at least expect them to finish in this mid-ladder range. Anyways, starting off with round 20, in which we are going to quickly skim through until the start of round 24. So we're at the start of round 24, and starting off with Collingwood versus Brisbane, I'm going to go Brisbane by 5 points. And now I'm going to click Essendon by 6, and then we're also going to go with Fremantle by 4. Now, Geelong versus Richmond at GMHB, I'm going to go Geelong by 54, and Bulldogs versus Melbourne, Bulldogs by 26. St Kilda versus Gold Coast, I'm going to go a St Kilda upset by 3. Sydney versus North Melbourne should be Sydney. Adelaide versus GWS, I'm going to go Adelaide by 17. And West Coast versus Hawthorn, I'm going to go with Hawthorn by 42. So we have the final ladder, and looking at the top 10, we have Geelong, Hawthorn, Brisbane, Gold Coast, followed by Adelaide, and then in 6th, Fremantle. And in the wildcard spots will be St Kilda, Sydney, Collingwood, and the Bulldogs. Now we're just going to quickly go through the wildcard and finals games. St Kilda versus Bulldogs, I'm going to say St Kilda, and Sydney versus Collingwood, I'm going to go Sydney. Geelong versus Gold Coast, I'm actually going to go a Gold Coast upset, and Adelaide versus Sydney, I'm going to go with Adelaide. Followed by Fremantle and St Kilda, I'm actually going to go with St Kilda, and Hawthorn and Brisbane, I'm going to go Hawthorn. Geelong and Adelaide in the semis, I'm going to go Geelong, and Brisbane St Kilda, I'm going to go with Brisbane. Gold Coast and Brisbane in the prelim, I'm going to go with the Brisbane, and Hawthorn and Geelong, I'm going to go with Hawthorn, leaving us with a grand final between Brisbane and Hawthorn, in which I'm going to pick Brisbane to win the premiership in 2025. Anyways, guys, that is pretty much it. Thank you guys so much for watching. Let me know what your ladder will be this year. Again, this is not my actual predictions. This is just predicting every game. Some of this will definitely not be in my normal predictions. It's just going over every game and seeing who will win going game by game. But I have Brisbane to win the premiership. Please subscribe if you enjoy and like the video. Anyways, guys, I'll see you in the next video. Bye.